Include now. Brought to you by Evenbreak.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Being Good Now. I'm your host Adam Highland. In this episode we're going to be looking at the commercialisation of disabled people, how organisations portray disabled people, and how authentic it really is, or in a lot of cases isn't. Before I have the pleasure of introducing our guest today, I'm going to introduce a new feature which is our Include Now button, which is a green button right in front of me, and then I'm going to be using this button when we hear some amazing inclusion nuggets. I think is a demonstration of best practice. So watch out for this button as we go forward in the series. Yes, inclusion. So without further ado, I have the pleasure of introducing Evenbreak Dayna to this episode. So Dayna, could you kindly introduce yourself please and tell us a bit about your current role and how you got into this field?
Sure. So hi, I'm Dayna. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a white woman with long brown hair, currently clipped up in a claw clip, and I'm wearing a mushroom headband and a long green dress. So I feel like my story into this kind of area is kind of really convoluted and not very straightforward, and I think a lot of people probably share that. So I was a professional actor for 2 years, and whilst I was on tour, I basically had what I know now to be an autistic meltdown, and soon enough got my diagnosis. I very quickly left that industry because it just wasn't very accessible. And as kind of a reroute into a new career, I went back to university to study my master's and pick up a project that I started at undergrad, which was looking into the lived experience of dyslexic people in higher education. And whilst I was there, I started documenting my own lived experience through the use of farce and comedy on TikTok. And very quickly, literally, the first video did very well and seemed to resonate with a lot of people. And within kind of 2 months, I had a community of over 50,000 people, and I was working with brands and partnerships. From there, I decided that I wanted to be behind the curtain, not just like in the influencer space. And so I joined an agency setting where my skills developed very, very quickly. It was an inclusive agency setting, Purple Goat, and I worked on such a diversity of campaigns. From there, I then moved to Evenbreak, and the reason why was because I wanted to be as a part of an organisation's through line, so from like kind of A to Z, because at Purple Goat, I was just kind of maybe a stop in their journey, and I really wanted to kind of be in an organisation long term, kind of helping and committing to helping disabled people in the community. So that's a little bit of like a bio.
Amazing, thank you. And it's really great to have you on today's episode. As of yesterday, one thing we just do every episode is 3 questions in 3 minutes, just to kind of get to know you a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So the first question I would like to ask is, what is your go-to playlist?
Everyone in this room knows what I'm going to say.
Very true.
But it is a very specific playlist, so it's Taylor Swift, but it's a playlist on Spotify called Bridges You Can Scream To. So that's the playlist. Taylor Swift, Bridges You Can Scream To.
And yeah, I think I need to go and do some listening on that one.
I'll send you a link.
Thank you. That'd be amazing. Second question is, who are some of your disability inclusion heroes?
I had 2. Is that okay?
You can have many like in a minute.
Okay. In a minute? Oh my gosh. Okay, get
2
speaking.
minutes.
Okay. So the first one is close to home at Evenbreak, and it is Megan. And the reason is just the conversations that I have with Meg on a daily basis around inclusion. Like, I learn so much from her, and I just think like her commitment to inclusion is palpable, and that's like really infectious. And then the second one, because I believe inclusion starts at home, it's actually my line manager Jem, who also works at Evenbreak. And the reason for that one is I love seeing inclusion and accessibility in practice, and kind of seeing those conversations happen and being able to have regular conversations about accessibility, even if you don't know all the answers, I think is kind of a great testament. Because often when we speak about kind of inclusion heroes, there's people that might be doing a TED talk, but I thought it was very important to include someone that, you know, does it day in, day out in a job role that might not be originally what they knew everything about inclusion, you know.
Amazing. That's really amazing. That really do include now on a daily basis. Amazing. So the first question is normally left for previous guests, but I'm going to go a bit rogue today, because I know that somebody has just got married. So I'd like to know, what was the one highlight of your day? I know it'd be lots, but...
Okay. I think the highlight was almost falling in the lock.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had this huge dress on that was very heavy, and I had to take it off at the ceremony because of pain. But so imagine this huge dress, lots and lots of tulle, and there's a lock. And I knew, like, from booking the venue, I was getting a picture on that lock. You know, I've got the spot in my room ready for it to go up on. And my partner stepped down, and as he held my hands to step me down, we didn't realise that you had to balance the weight on a lock from one end to the other. So as soon as I stepped in, my feet just like went like that into the water. Luckily, my partner moved forward and his feet were wet and was able to like lift me over. But yeah, that was a standout moment because it was funny, scary, and cold.
Okay. No, the kind of stuff I was expecting one that is certainly special and unforgettable, which is amazing. I know we all had an amazing day and it looked beautiful.
Thank you.
So if we move on now to the main topic of today's podcast, which is all around kind of like the marketing and the commercialisation of inclusion and how authentic it is or isn't sometimes. Fair to say that lots of organisations have used disabled people in their marketing campaigns over the years. But what I'd love to know from you is what is the difference between authentic representation in those campaigns compared to more tokenistic tick box?
That's a great question. Okay, so it's kind of a complex answer, but bear with me. So I think what sets apart a tokenistic campaign from an authentic campaign is the journey. So if a brand or organisation is jumping straight to the shiny moments on social, it's probably not authentic. There's a lot of steps that need to come before that. So, you know, whether it's your product, whether it's how you are internally, you know, kind of investing in things like training and consultancy, joining Evenbreak, things like that before you get to those kind of what I call like the shiny moments of social is what sets apart like a tokenistic campaign from an authentic campaign. And I think as well, like, so I'll use like an example from like my influencer kind of background. I've had a few brands come to me wanting to work with me, you know, and I'm kind of filling a box per se, but they'll be shocked when I send them a reasonable adjustments list. So, you know, they'll want me to speak about my lived experience and how a product or service might be helping me or, you know, supporting me, but then not have the internal skill set or kind of knowledge to be able to actually work with a disabled person. So I think for me, yeah, the thing that sets it apart is knowing it's a journey and you can't jump straight to you know, like the photo shoots, the campaigns and things like that, without doing all the work that comes before that, and knowing that once that campaign is done, it's you've got to carry on that journey, because inclusion is forever evolving, and there's always more work to be done, isn't there?
Yeah, indeed, and just to follow on from that, that's okay, because I think the disabled influencer space has grown over the last 3 or 4 years, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think companies are learning the difference? Because I know some amazing influencers out there. Do you think there's a good learning space to be had?
Mm-hmm. I do, yeah. I think there's some brands that are doing really, really well, and some organisations that are doing really, really well. Just to go back to kind of like the explosion of the influencer space, I think is really interesting. And I feel like I might say something slightly controversial, but I feel like I can say it because I am in the space and can say it. But I think one thing that like perhaps where the work needs to be done is, so I'm a disabled person and I document my lived experience on social media, but I'm always very specific about not being an expert in autism, for instance, because, you know, what can happen is not misinformation, but I just think like I've learned it myself from my own experience. So I used to think like, oh, well, I can talk about this because of this. And of course you absolutely can. But when I see kind of brands and organizations hiring like one look of disability, for instance. So for example, if someone's running a campaign and they only hire white neurodivergent people with low support needs, then I think perhaps you need to go back to the drawing board and look at the diversity of disability as a whole, and kind of make sure the full diversity of voices are being represented in a campaign, but also who you bring in to do training and consultancy is really important. So making sure you've kind of got a diversity of voices from the ground up, I think is, yeah.
Amazing, thank you. So, moving on, focusing on the work that you and the marketing team do at Evenbreak. How do you go about creating a campaign that celebrates diversity at Evenbreak?
So it's lived experience always. All of our campaigns that I've kind of led have been honestly from like water cooler conversations or remote versions of those. So a great example is our Pride in Talent campaign last year. So we commissioned a disability inclusive intersectionality pride flag and marched it at London Pride. And the reason we did that is because internally we were having a conversation about how difficult it is for disabled people to access like LGBTQI plus spaces, and a lot of these events aren't accessible. So from that, then we kind of started building, you know, the key messaging for the campaign and what we wanted to get across. And, you know, lo and behold, it kind of all came together and went that way. So in terms of kind of how we navigate it at Evenbreak, it is very much from the lived experience of our team, but also the people and the candidates that we interact with.
Yeah. Well, I also love the I Do It Best campaign.
Yes, I love I Do It Best.
Can you just quickly comment on what that is?
Yes, so I Do It Best campaign is a campaign we're currently running. It's ongoing. There's actually 2 videos live now. And it's basically celebrating the diverse way that disabled people work. And, it, you know, it's kind of looking to push boundaries and kind of very much in that kind of space of, you know, people must return back to the office, all those kind of conversations. But also, you know, celebrating that there's lots of different ways. There's the conventional ways that work for some disabled people, and then there's unconventional ways. So my video, for instance, I get a lot of swelling in my joints, and for me, elevation is key. So often I will sit on the bed, and I'm sure the team can attest to that. I'll be sat on the bed with my legs straight and my kind of what they call the desks that go over your lap. And the campaign itself is really a first for Evenbreak because it's slightly more cheeky and kind of more, I don't know what the right word is. I don't know if you've got a word.
Edgy,
yeah. And it was actually someone internally who said, you know, kind of I do it best, wink, and then proceed to say where you work best. So yeah, we're actually got a few more coming out soon, which is really exciting.
People can join in.
Yes, they can. There is a hashtag. I don't know if we're able to include it in the description or...
Yeah,
yes, I'm getting the thumbs up.
Yeah,
But yeah, so if you want to kind of share where you do it best, all you need to do is film a video of where you do it best, and then just tag Evenbreak, hashtag I do it best, and we will reshare it. We'd love to see it.
amazing. So, moving on to the next question, that is, have you noticed the more recently inclusion has become an opportunity for commercialization, and how do we navigate this?
Yes, so the answer is yes, for sure. But in my mind, you at the moment of where we're at with inclusion, you can't have one without the other. So what I mean by that is, like, you know, brands, for instance, making inclusive campaigns, it benefits, well, if done correctly, obviously, it benefits like the progression of inclusion and, you know, the inclusion of disabled people. That being said, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but going back to what I was saying before, that it just can't be in isolation. So, you know, it works, but it has to have kind of the investment in training internally and, you know, knowing that the journey doesn't stop on those moments. It continues, and it's got to be a long-term commitment. So it's kind of, it's twofold. I feel like it's, what's it called, like a dichotomy, where it's like they influence each other, and in an ideal world it would just be great if it just happened, but I think often to get in the room with big organizations and brands, you kind of have to speak their language and about the bottom line, and that's just a very honest answer to where we're at right now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And as you talk, I was just thinking when you mentioned the importance of training a minute ago. We did some training on our partners, and they produced a lovely kind of summary of their takeaways. And what I loved most was they realised that they had an individual wheelchair user on the front page who, one, you could tell it was a stock image because the wheelchair was there. And it's just like hospital wheelchair, and it didn't feel authentic. One, they pointed that out, and two, they realised from the training that actually only 8% of disabled people are wheelchair users.
Yeah.
So I think I'm saying that because I think, you know, the training part is a really key element of getting authentic content marketing when it comes to disability inclusion.
For sure, if your view of disability is quite narrow, you're really not going to encapsulate the community. So yeah, I totally agree. And also, one of my favourite autistic interests is to spot stock imagery. I'm quite good at it. And that's like such a simple thing, right, that you could invest in, and you can do it, you know, not in a super expensive way to make disabled people feel included from your marketing comms.
Real people.
Real people, real stories.
Amazing. Who'd have thought it?
Yep.
What does the future of inclusive marketing look like, do you think?
I think diversity and disability. So I kind of said before that, like, you know, sometimes I will see a social media campaign being run and, you know, it's kind of all white people, for instance. Now that's not very reflective, or it's one like sub bracket, I don't know if that's the right terminology, of disability. And I think that the future of inclusive marketing is having like diversity and real voices and real people built in from the ground up. So it's something that you think about on a grassroots level, not just on a, oh, we want to do an inclusive campaign because it's the Paralympics, for instance. It's consistent, and it's also, I'd love to get to a point where we almost don't need specific campaigns. We do right now, but I would love to get to a point where it's almost just naturally inferred or just embedded into every campaign that somebody runs.
So Dayna, 1 second.
Oh.
Yes, inclusion.
Yay! I got one.
Indeed, the first use of it. Yes, inclusion button. I think that's seeing it as lived experience, but normalising it.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the split inclusion, it's about everyday inclusion.
Yeah,
Now,
sure.
amazing. Thank you. So, the next kind of regular part of podcast is beyond the buzzword, or buzzwords, I probably should say. And it's, I guess it's looking at words that I use quite regularly and band around quite freely and trying to really understand what they are and what they mean and what they don't mean. So today's buzzword is representation. What actually is representation when it comes to marketing?
In very simple terms, it means anybody being able to look at your brand or organisation or your comms and see themselves reflected in it. That's it's kind of as simple as that, really. It's people being able to see themselves in your marketing, and a diversity of people, all people, hopefully. But yeah.
And that creates a sense of belonging.
Yeah, it does. It creates a sense of belonging, authenticity, and community. You know, if you can see yourself reflected, I know myself as a disabled person, I'm more likely to kind of go with a brand or organisation that is representative and inclusive. And there is actually stats that reflect that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but you know, people are more likely to trust people that are inclusive and are representative of the world that we live in.
I guess that is authentic commercialisation in many ways, because people want to use services and spend money and work in places where they feel like they can identify and belong and feel safe to be their authentic self.
For sure. I mean, I think in the context of working, you know, we spend a third of our lives at work. I think it's really important that, and I'm sure a lot of candidates would probably agree that, like, it's important that you feel included in the workplace and represented in the workplace, in the place where you, the brand or the company or the organisation that you work for.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That brings us to the end of this episode. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your lived experience and your journey and your insights into marketing and creating inclusive marketing campaigns. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Lots of things to take away from that conversation with Dayna. For me, what Dayna really highlighted is the importance of not having a one-off campaign once a year where disabled people are represented. So normalising the fact that disabled people need to be included in marketing and advertising every single day. And by doing that, we can start to create situations where people feel like they belong, people feel like they want to go and work for organisations and spend money on services and goods. So we really do need to do more to normalise and make sure real life individuals are represented in our marketing. So, as always, thank you for tuning in. Please like, share and subscribe, and until next time, include now.